Welcome back, pro wrestling fans. Welcome back, IWC. It's your old buddy, the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy. And I tell it like it is. Coming to you live to tape 25 feet below the surface of the earth. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. I've got quite the pickle, quite the dilemma. We go through this every time. I'm live, right now, live, in real time, but I am taping this at the same time. But fuck it, you guys get the idea. At least you're here. Welcome back to Chaos Corner on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel, for another special edition of Story Time with the GOC. That's me. And I'll say that to say this because I tell it like it is. I apologize for the cussing, man. I know I don't have to. I mean, it just happens sometimes. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. With my over 50 years of being a scout, a historian, agent, a producer, a smark, a mark. That's right, I said it, a mark. And my over 3+ decades as a pro wrestling manager, working from everybody from pillar to post, coast to coast, and border to border. Heroes, legends, young lions, rookies, veterans. And a manager that got in the ring and took the fucking bumps. That's right, I said it again. Took the bumps. How many of you could say that out there in this podcast world? And this is not a podcast, this is a TV show. An episodic YouTube channel television show with the Guardian of Chaos for Chaos Corner. Follow me on all social media platforms, and you know what they are. On X, a.k.a. Twitter, it's at Big Daddy GOC, and the GOC stands for the Guardian of Chaos. On Instagram, it's the Guardian of Chaos. There's 2 accounts on Facebook. That's right, there's 2. J Brony, for all you jabronis, and Prodigio Fidelis El Guardian in honor of my heritage. Follow me on Gitter, Gab, Truth Social, Rumble. I cover it all in the IWC. We're going to hop off all the other social media platforms. Meet me back here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel. Leave a comment. Hit the like button. Subscribe. Inbox me. Email me. Say something, for crying out loud. Big shout out and recognition to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Because if he's for us, no one else can be against us. Because Jesus Christ is coming back soon. Don't be caught dead without him, and that's a shoot. All right, fans, kick back, grab a beverage of your choice, grab a snack, grab a meal, grab the kids. Yeah, this is rated PG, sometimes rated R, but we don't get too crazy here. We're less than 25 subscribers away from the 1,000 to start going live here. I'm doing it the hard way, earning it. None of this StreamYard bullshit or anything else like that. I want to do it the hard way, hard work and earning it. Over 2,500 videos on this channel. Everything from the AEW watch-alongs, WWE, MLW, the NWA, New Japan, Ring of Honor, Impact TNA, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. And of course, Story Time with the Guardian of Chaos. Book reviews, retro reviews, classic today and pro wrestling history reports. You get everything here, as I said. We're up and down 95, across 91 and 84, all the way down Route 8 in the shadows of Titan Towers in the greater New England tri-state Northeast area. So take out your notebooks. Here on this channel, you learn something. There's no chicanery. There's none of all the kayfabe and everything else that all these other podcasters, and no disrespect to anyone out there in that community, the IWC. You come here and learn actual facts, historical facts, true stories. At least you can come here and it's not all bullshit. And again, I apologize for the cussing. It just happens. You could hear the beautiful campfire crackling sounds of the fireplace. Once again, it's cold outside, but it's warm in here in Chaos Corner. So much love and respect. I really appreciate all you guys and gals being here. And just know that I know that you're watching. I have the analytics, so whether you're subscribed or not, when you click this channel and come on, it comes to me. I know some people are out there creeping and watching and thinking you're gathering information. I don't really give a fuck. How about that? In order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself. Once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. Because there's three types of people in this world: those who don't know what happened, those who wonder what happened, and people like the guardian of chaos, Big Daddy, that make things happen. Remember that. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Let that marinate. Let that sink in. Be prepared. Everyone stay aware of what's going on in today's world in 2024. Wars everywhere. Invasion at the southern border and northern border. This country's being taken over. All the BS in politics and CRT and racial division and everything else that you could think of. And men's and women's sports, women and men's sports. Oh, that's not what we were here intended to do. So open up that big book and get familiar, because what we're going to face coming up in this coming year in 2024 is something like you're never going to see. That's why I'm here, for a distraction, motivation, much needed stress relief, not only for you, but for me as well. Stay mentally, emotionally, physically, and especially spiritually fit. So now that I'm done with the opening monologue here, let's get down to brass tacks. Kick back and relax. As I said, I'll chill out now for story time. Storytelling, if you will, with your old buddy, the GOC. I hear the boy around somewhere. My Maine Coon is here somewhere. The beast, where is he? We love him. Emilio, going into business for himself, as usual. He's over here doing something. Wrapped up in chains like my life. Read the Mitt, 25 years behind the walls, bounty hunter, private investigator, private bodyguard, security. You name it, I've done it. That's why you're here. Nobody else makes it relatable like I do and bring you into my home. No green screens, no music, no editing, live to tape. Whatever happens, happens. However it comes out, it comes out. That's how I do it here. As I said, raw dog. Here we go. The war to settle the score. That's what the topic is today on Storytime with the GOC. Besides being a top wrestler in the ring for the WWF at the time, I also became the Federation's main man behind the mic. I was managing two wrestlers, Pretty Paul Orndorff and Dr. D. David Schultz. Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and the legendary legit badass, the original bad boy in pro wrestling, David Schultz. You guys know my personal connection with Dr. D. Go back and listen to the last show where we featured Story Time with Dr. D, and you'll understand what the fuck I'm talking about. One night in 1983, I participated in an interview with them that led Vince to my own segment. No, not Chaos Corner, but Piper's Pit in the World Wrestling Federation. Schultz was kind of a bully who always tried to push his weight around, and Orndorff was wired and tight like the championship racehorse Man o' War. During their 2-minute and 54-second interview that night, two burly athletes tried to hog all the mic time. Not to mention that these larger-than-life wrestlers were blocking my puny ass from getting my airtime. Schultz and Orndorff went at each other shoulder to shoulder. Wow. Each wrestler had his own share of mic time, with Orndorff going first, then Schultz. They were trying their hardest to get themselves over, also purposely leaving me in the shadow of their masses. But at the 2-minute, 50-second mark, with only 4 seconds to go, I stole the show. I put one hand on Orndorff's shoulder from behind and one hand on Schultz's shoulder from behind. Pushed myself right in front of them, now blocking them from the cameras, and said with all the charisma I could muster, "Roddy Piper, giant killer," and the interview ended. It was the last thing the viewing audience saw and what they remembered most. My frat brothers also saw it, and they started horse laughing because these two guys who had tried to bury Roddy Piper during the almost 3-minute interview were themselves buried in 4 seconds. This ad lib not only brought the audience and wrestlers to their knees, it also opened a door for me with Piper's Pit. Fans, I say it all the time, students, grapplers, talent that's out there listening right now, and I know that you are, ad lib is what gets you through the promos. Yeah, you can get in the ring and learn how to take bumps and fall and the maneuvers and the holds and counter holds, which is very, very important. Even the high-flying BS. That's why Mario Mancini and Paul Roma run Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling along with Paul Perez, the 3 trainers down there, my home company. ParadiseAlleyProWrestling.com on all social media platforms. But you know what's just as important? Being able to get over on the mic, in front of the cameras, in front of a live audience. That's where this, I want to say, new generation of grapplers and talent have nothing on the old stars and the veterans and the heroes and legends. Just as important as being in the ring and performing the match, it's also as important as being a showman. Promos, mic skills, being in front of a live audience, being on TV. Just as important. And ad-libbing, you don't need a script. You don't need anyone to tell you what to do. 1 take is all it should take. At the most 2 if you're not accustomed to it. I was known as the 1-take chaos. Because you give me 5 seconds, 10 seconds of what you want me to put over, and I don't need your words. I'll do it. I'll put it over in my own words. Make it real. Make it relatable. Very, very important to put your men over in this business. After that successful ad-lib bit, I approached Vince McMahon Jr. in St. Louis about giving me a shot at an interview segment every week. I told them to give me 3 weeks, a bow tie, and a mic stand, and if I didn't cut the mustard, I'd be out of there, no questions asked. What did he have to lose? I tried to show the WWF head honcho that I could better serve him and the company in front of the camera. Stirring the pot, if you will. Then in the current role as a rebel re-heel manager. Well, Vince not only bought it into the concept book, he bought it hook, line, and sinker. He had a stage crew build me my very own set, which added a bit of glitz and glamour to my segments. Kind of like how Chaos Corner was rebranded and remolded after Piper's Pit and Captain's Corner with a.k.a. Captain Lou Albano. Now you know where the live editions of Chaos Corner came from. Very influential, especially with Piper's Pit, way ahead of its time. One of the main reasons I established Piper's Pit was that there was a battle among the wrestlers over how much TV time each person had, and the way it was being designated. Again, remember, you have 25 of the top wrestlers in the world wrestling in the same federation, vying for the fans' attention. So at some point, egos are going to get in the way. The TV time also became an issue because the guys saw it as their opportunity to bring the spotlight to them and on them rather than Hulk Hogan, who McMahon was pushing down the wrestling audience's throat at that time. He didn't have to push too far because Hogan was over. Change the business. Hogan was capitalizing on Vince's push and his movie fame with Sylvester Stallone in Rocky III. And most guys were convinced that he and Vince had a cut Faust-like deal with the devil. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. They were partners in crime and all the rest of us were just supposed to be window dressing. But not me. I wasn't going to settle for being second fiddle to anyone. Even when I was managing Orndorff and Schultz, I was still trying to get myself over with the crowd and get recognized. That's when it occurred to me to use my mouth. My big mouth had gotten me noticed earlier in my career in places like Los Angeles, Charlotte, Atlanta, Canada, and Portland. So why should New York and the WWF be any different? Again, I was going to stay away from the private family matters of my wrestling guests, but almost everything else was fair game. I wanted to keep my visitors on Piper's Pit, off balance, while also keeping the audience entertained. Right from the very first guest, wrestler Frankie Williams, the legendary jobber Frankie Williams, I went for the jugular, rendering my guests teary-eyed and almost speechless. Although at first it must have seemed odd to see a macho guy in a kilt interviewing another tough guy, they quickly learned that the real men do wear kilts. The audience fell in love with Piper's Pit and labeled me the man they love to hate. They looked forward to me either bringing out the animal in these wrestlers or bringing them to their knees. With Williams, I did the latter. Frankie Williams was a wrestler from San Juan, Puerto Rico. No offense, man. They nada. Keep it to work, man. Lighten up. For all my Spanish-speaking friends who had been wrestling a long time but had never won a match. Kind of like my old buddy Mario Mancini, who was in the WWF from 84 to 92. At that time, the youngest grappler in the World Wrestling Federation. Debuted The Undertaker, King Kong Bundy, Ted DiBiase, the Hart Foundation, Demolition, Big Bully Busey. The list goes on and on and on and on. I can go on forever with Mancini. But I think he did win a couple of matches, Mancini. So you know Frankie Williams. Let me refocus here, guys. Let me not get crazy here talking about the Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling owner. We just had a successful event this past weekend, too. New Year's resolution. Go to YouTube and check out Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling. Facebook, Twitter. You won't regret it. Run by 4 men that worked under the guidance of WWF and WCW. Let that sink in as far as reputable, credible credentials for pro wrestling schools. Do your research. Do your due diligence like I do here on Chaos Corner. So here we go, back to Piper's Pit with Frankie Williams and Roddy Piper. And soon as he sat down for his interview, Frankie Williams, on Piper's Pit, I asked him, Frankie, where are you from? And he answered me in his San Juan accent. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. That's not a very good accent. I get it. I turned on him and said, oh, you're from Columbus, Ohio, huh? Well, let me tell you something. You ought to go back to Ohio and get a job as a shoe salesman because you stink as a wrestler. You've never won a match in your life. Now, this kind of thing was unheard of in wrestling. In a wrestling interview, you usually try to put one guy over as you battle back and forth. But to say you've never won a match and that you stink had never been done before. It actually tugged at Frankie Williams' pride. And we know pride is the root of all evil. And he tried to defend himself, explaining to me and the viewing audience why he had never won. I might never have won a match in my life, but every time I go in there, I give my whole heart. Williams said defensively, I know, I don't do the best impressions. And I said to him, well, your whole heart ain't enough. And at this point, we stand up and I start hitting Frankie to push him backstage through the curtain so I could finish the segment. But Frankie's pride was so hurt that it really turned into a fight. I now had to turn it on. Boom, bang, crash, boom, to get rid of him. And then once I finally threw him out, I turned to the camera, said one of my many phrases that became my trademark. Listen, you don't throw rocks at a guy that's got a machine gun. Or as the GOC's now famous coined phrases, and I won't go through them right here, but you know what they are if you've been a follower of mine and a fan of mine, or even just a casual. The fact that things got so real and so physical on the air was impressive enough. But when I scored at the end with that punchline, it hit the wrestling AP in no time, and the ratings started pouring in. Wow. And wow spelled backwards is wow. With the great buzz and fan reaction for the first Piper's Pit segment, my notoriety was well on its way. Both the fans and the wrestlers now looked at Piper's Pit as a contest to see who would blink first. But I always kept everyone off balance, because every time they thought they had all the answers, I changed the questions. This got around the wrestling world very quickly, and before you knew it, kids at university frat houses weren't the only people watching the show. Wrestling had now made its way into the homes of doctors, lawyers, kids, and parents alike. It was now hip to be watching the squared circle sport, and especially Piper's Pit. Now remember, fans, the time frame here. middle 80s into the latter 80s, the whole rock and wrestling connection, MTV, War to Settle a Score, Brawl to Settle it All, the birth of Hulkamania, what changed the business for McMahon, the end of the territories just about. At that point, I must be in my early 20s. Yeah. How about that? Along with the personality clashes, the beauty of Piper's Pit was that nothing was ever written in stone for the segment. Ad lib, I keep telling you guys. We didn't have the same guest each week, and it was strictly improv. Bingo again, listen to what the GOC says. Every time it was a new experience for the audience and for me. You could always expect the unexpected, and that's what made it so popular. Piper's Pit was also a forum that allowed the WWF during the presentation of the award to Albano in order to get the fans buzzing about the rock and wrestling connection. You remember that infamous night. I know that you guys do. I just want to make sure I have my facts straight because you know that I get my facts straight here. And we have to be actual, factual information because I do tell it like it is. There's no bullshit here. Piper's Pit was also the forum that allowed the WWF to cross wrestling over into another entertainment industry by bringing on all kinds of talent as guests. One of the first stars to appear on my show was 80s singing sensation Cyndi Lauper. Girls just wanna have fun. Oh, oh, girls and boys just wanna have fun. Girls, they wanna have fun. Girl, no? Too early? Too late? Okay. Singing sensation Cyndi Lauper with her manager David Wolf. Both music industry giants were friends of Captain Lou Albano, one of my mentors and who I molded the GOC after. That's for dang sure. And this is why you come here, because I give you these tidbits of information during the information that you're receiving that's actual and factual. As I said before, and you know I always repeat myself, that's part of the shtick. They loved watching me on Piper's Pit each week. Well, once I found out that Cyndi was going to be a guest, I went to work gathering material on the girl that just wanted to have fun. Besides thinking of some very witty things to say to her, I had some visual tricks up my sleeve a la Lauper. I had a clothespin hanging from my ear and had my hair spiked, which generated tremendous heat from the crowd. This would be a very important development because from that point on, Cyndi and David Wolf got very much involved in wrestling, and this really turned the rock and roll community onto the sport, upside down on their ear. But I didn't limit my non-wrestler guest on Piper's Pit to the music industry. One time at a live event in Madison Square Garden, John Stossel from 2020 came in to do some interviews, and I had him on Piper's Pit. Now, if you go back to my last Storytime episode, which was within the last week, I break down the whole incident at Madison Square Garden with Dr. D. David Schultz and a slap heard around the world with that pencil neck geek John Stossel. That's right, I said it with the brain of a dehydrated BB. I had him on Piper's Pit, speaking of Stossel. Once a month, we did the show on NBC in place of Saturday Night Live. Let that sink in. It was called Saturday Night's Main Event, and this was in the middle and late 80s. Man, was that tremendous. What a creation that went on at 11:30 at night on a Saturdays, usually taped, but brought out all the ratings and stars. Nothing in today's 2024 industry can compete with this and the golden era, or at least one of the golden eras, in my opinion. And while Stossel was on with me, his crony was trying to get an interview with another grappler, wrestler, if you will, Dr. D. David Schultz, asking him if wrestling was fake or real. Schultz was now giving the 2020 employer the business big time, and Stossel just cut away from us and said he was going to take care of the situation. That infamous night at Madison Square Garden. Now, I was standing about 15 feet away from them when I saw the cocky TV personality grab the microphone from his associate and tell his crew to turn up the cameras. As soon as his guys were ready to go, Stossel said to Schultz, "Is wrestling real or wrestling fake?" Well, no sooner did he get out the words than question our sports integrity than he got a huge whack upside the head. Schultz open-handed the 2020 reporter and knocked him down, yelling in his face, "Is that fake, asshole?" And you remember on my last story time with Dr. D. David Schultz, we just covered this. How ironic that I'm onto this now with Piper's Pit. And you see, I almost knocked over one of the cameras. You can't make this up, and that's why you're here. So we're on the open. Schultz open-handed the 2020 reporter, knocked him down, yelled at his face, "Is that fake, you asshole?" He then open-handed him again, and Stossel went down and was nearly crying for his mum. While the incident got Schultz and wrestling a lot of attention from the press, it also ended up costing the WWF and or Schultz a bundle after Stossel sued. When the battle between Stossel and the WWF was resolved in courts, another war was about to take place that brought further attention to pro wrestling. Take out your notebooks. On February 18th, 1985, again, I'm in my early 20s, 22, 23 years old, MTV broadcast a war to settle the score, live from New York's Madison Square Garden, with Hulk Hogan and me being the main event. In the months leading up to this event, I had played all my cards right. The combination of me being the Federation's #1 heel and the popularity of Piper's Pit, along with my association with Cyndi Lauper and Dave Wolf, made my going head-to-head with Hogan a no-brainer. During the negotiations for the big event, Wolf was a liaison between Vince McMahon and MTV. Lauper, who was the female vocalist of the year at the time, "True colors shining through your true colors, that's why I love you." No? Not good enough? Nah, too bad, it's my channel. You gotta listen to it. I'm only kidding, man. Don't be so sensitive. It's a work, baby. I had played my cards right, as Piper had stated. The combination of me being the Federation's #1 heel, Piper's Pit, along with my association with Lauper and Wolf, was a no-brainer. As I said, during the negotiations, Vince, MTV, and Lauper, who was female vocalist of the year in 1985, was going to be the rock star who would lure music fans to watch the mat sport. And if you remember, Captain Lou was in her video, "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." The mat sport and Hogan and I were going to be responsible for carrying the unique event. This presented no problem for the two of us. There was always a natural chemistry between Hogan and me that was second to none. One night we were all at Madison Square Garden, and Cyndi and Dick Clark were giving an award to Captain Louis Albano, who had been in the video for her smash song, "Girls Just Wanna Have Fun." I know, a little bit too much. Do a shot for every time I say that. Well, before Captain Lou could even utter thank you to the presenters, the two presenters, I came and took the award and smashed it over his head. Bang! I then almost caused the youthful-looking Clark's hair over his head to go gray. It almost caused the youthful-looking Clark's hair to even go grayer. Is that a word? I don't think it is. When I turned and stared menacingly in his direction, and he screamed, "Please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me," I decided to give Clark a break. But Cyndi Lauper wasn't so lucky. In typical heel fashion, I went after the poor helpless girl, the damsel in distress, and without hesitation, I ended up kicking her in the head, which drew all sorts of boos and hisses from the crowd. But believe me, things could have been much worse for the colorful singer if I had wanted them to be and do it my way. Before the whole scenario unfolded on TV, David Wolf had asked me if I would kick Cyndi during the presentation of the award to Albano in order to get the fans buzzing about the rock and wrestling connection. But he wanted to be reassured that I wouldn't hurt her. There's no reassurances or assurances here in pro wrestling. I told Dave that I was up to the task and that I could make it look like I really kicked her and injured her. But about 30 minutes before the kicking event, a fellow from the WWF's New York office came up to me and planted a vicious seed in my head when he said, "The end of Cyndi Lauper's career could be the beginning of yours." This sat on my mind until the very moment that I had to boot her. There were moral decisions that I had to make. Do I really kick an innocent woman who's going along with the storyline to help promote our sport and who's also trusting me not to hurt her? Do I go against the promise I made Wolf, or do I punt her so hard that the whole audience feels it, making the WWF brass happy? Quite the dilemma, quite the pickle. I truly had a huge dilemma here. It's like Roddy just heard me say that. And rest in peace, Piper. The sickness of our sport had once again consumed me, leaving me to ponder what I was going to do with the rock singer when it came to lay one on her. Do I kick her or don't I kick her? What was it going to be? Even when Cindy stepped through the ropes that night, I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew I had the ability to make it look real if I wanted to, but I was still thinking about what the WWF official said to me about the end of her career could be the beginning of mine. Let's think about what Vince said to tear his ass up to David Schultz against John Stossel, and then look what happened to David Schultz. Basically blackballed by the same WWF official owner, if you will, and Vince McMahon, and now you have WWF officials in Piper's head. They'll sell you out in a heartbeat. You guys know that this is a scumbag business, right? A business that you love, kind of like the mob or whatever. Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in, to use that phrase. And it's the truth. I went to wrestling school briefly when I first started attempting this journey in 1984. I had met the Wild Samoans, and in particular the Tonga Kid, earlier in 1983. Here we are in 2024, 40 years into my journey into pro wrestling. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, as I always say. And about what promoters and other grapplers and people wanting to be in your ear, and haters and people that are jealous and envious and just downright scumbags. I'm telling it like it is. I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly here on Chaos Corner. But on the flip side, I was thinking about Cindy's safety and the damage that one of the fierce kicks could really do if I delivered it. When it came to land the blow, I threw my leg at Lauper at full speed, but in mid-kick, I decided not to hurt her and pulled back. But even though I held back, the audience, including the NYPD, thought I had gone through with it. Believe me, I could have lived with this if I wanted to. I was certainly callous enough, but the bottom line is that I chose not to. The fans thought I really connected, and boy, did it get their attention. No one could believe what they had just seen. The media also had a field day with this act, as it made the papers and news highlights all over the country. But my socking music personalities didn't end with that award presentation. Now it was Wolf's turn. A week or so later, Dave confronted me in the ring about kicking his client, and I gave him an up-and-close personal look at the wrestling canvas when I body slammed her right before the fans' eyes. I was now not only the fans' love to hate, I was also drawing media attention to us like never before. Even though everyone hated my guts, my antics also started a cult of bad guy fans. Wolf got all his friends in the rock and roll community jump on the bandwagon and write stories about these incidents. As a result, we were on the front covers of music magazines as well as wrestling publications. So now it was all set. My hard work both in and out of the ring forced McMahon's hand to choose me to oppose Hulk Hogan on the War to Settle the Score main event on MTV, which you guys all know was developed in 1981. MTV, the first decade or so, maybe even the first 2 decades, was tremendous. It truly was the voice of a generation until it went woke as well. Now it's garbage. I'm just putting it out there. It's the way I see it. I remember getting off the airplane at Newark Airport and seeing a camera crew from MTV waiting there for me. As soon as a mic was placed in front of me, I left the lady reporter from the music video station know how I felt about her channel. I said that MTV stood for Music to Vomit By, and she countered my volley by asking me how I felt about hitting a woman. I told her that I was an equal opportunist, and if women got in the way, I'd nail them just like anybody else. That's not what we stand for here on Chaos Corner. Just to let it know, we don't always agree with what's put out here for content. It's just our independent evaluation. So these voices and words aren't always my own. Well, the voices. I don't give a shit anyway. I'd nail them just like anybody else. This caused quite a stir right before the War to Settle the Score, which was now going to include not only Cyndi Lauper, but also Hulk Hogan's good friend from the A-Team, Mr. T. Mr. T was on the 18. At this time, he had a pretty good ego on for himself. Not that the rest of us didn't. And Hogan's a great guy and a great businessman, but I don't think either one of us had much love for the other at that particular moment in time. But we had one thing in common. We had a mutual friend named Rick Martel. Although we were on opposite sides of the fence, we both had been roommates with Martel at some point in our careers. He had told each of us that the other guy was a decent guy, so we both valued Martel's opinions. This was also time when we began to weed out who was worth risking your reputation for and who was worth trusting it in the ring. Very important in today's world of pro wrestling. Let me say that again. This was the time when we were beginning to weed out who was worth risking your reputation for and who was worth trusting in the ring and outside of the ring. Like that Fabergé shampoo commercial, tell this one, tell that, and then so on and so on and so on. Telephone, telecommunications, tele-wrestler. You guys get where I'm going, right? But what some people don't know is that even after I was told that I was going to help headline this special event, it almost didn't happen. The night of the event, I was at Madison Square Garden, and I was asked to take a dive for Hogan, and I said no. This started a time in my career where I wouldn't take dives, wouldn't let anyone pin my shoulders, but I had my reasons. I had worked too damn hard for too damn long to get where I was, and I wasn't about to take a fall for anyone. Don't get me wrong. I had no problem with losing to the guy, but not by pinfall. That's what it's all about, is putting other people over. You know that, right? Listen to what I'm saying. I had no problem with losing to the guy, but not by pinfall, as I previously stated. I knew that if Hogan pinned me that night, it would be the end for me. Hogan would just move on to the next heel of the month, and where would that leave me? I wasn't some flash in the pan, so I wasn't about to let that happen. When I approached Captain Lou Albano, I told him what had just happened and what I wanted to do against Hogan. He warned me that McMahon and the company wouldn't understand. They only saw it as a star-studded match that they had to put a lot of money on the line for and didn't care about any other wrestler's career at that time other than Hogan's. The captain advised me to stick to my guns and with my aggression and strength, never let anyone pin my shoulders. That's why Captain Lou was who he was. The fucking man. So I held out and told him I would only lose to Hogan by DQ. McMahon and Hogan finally agreed to my demands, and the match was ready to roll. I now became king of the disqualifications. The two of us had a lot of energy that night in Madison Square Garden. I remember I wanted to get under the skin of all the Hulkamaniacs and the MTV viewers before we even started to wrestle. So I wore a Hogan t-shirt, which I ripped off like Hogan as soon as I got in the ring, and I carried a very expensive Gibson guitar, which I smashed right before the crowd's eyes. These antics electrified the fans almost immediately. This was now the new brand of wrestling. No longer was it just a sport of hand-to-hand combat, it was now also a show. It wasn't like winning the Super Bowl, World Series, or the NBA championship. It was new energy. I remember Gorilla Monsoon behind the mic that night explaining to the viewing audience how the crowd was screaming and yelling for us even before we exchanged a blow. When the bell rang, Hogan and I didn't waste any time. We just charged each other and began trading punches. This set the tone for the wrestling from then on. Hogan and I were able to bring the sport to a whole new level as we combined showmanship and intensity in the ring like never before. Say what you want about Hogan and what you think about your personal opinion outside the ring. That doesn't fucking matter when it comes to his career and his legacy. Don't you guys get that yet? Whether you agree with him or not. Yeah, so he's a liar. He's also could be a scumbag. It is what it is, man. There was legitimate heat and animosity there. There was a 6'7" tan guy with 24-inch arms facing a very real bagpipe-playing kilt, 6'1.5", 232-pound guy in the ring, and they hated each other. As the match got going, we held the people in the palms of our hands for about 15 minutes into it. I sensed that everyone was in tune with what was going on. Everyone was totally committed. The fans, the wrestlers, the promoters. As much came to the 15-minute mark, and we were at the match 15-minute mark. With all the hullabaloo, Hogan was down, and I was yanking on his yellow hair. That's right, I said hullabaloo. And so Paul Orndorff and Mr. T both jumped in and raced into the ring. The outcome of the war to settle a score came down to me sucker punching Mr. T. What you looking at? Ah, it's Willis, isn't it? What did Mr. T say? What was his famous saying, Mr. T? I just imitated Willis. The little guy there. What you looking at, sucker? Willis? Ah, you guys get the drift here. My mind's like a lazy Susan. It'll come back around, man. I'm as confused as a baby at Hooters. After landing the lethal blow, a New York City policeman jumped into the ring and grabbed me, but I flung him away. Then all hell broke loose as the other policemen rushed to the mat. An aid to their fellow man in blue. You now had real people getting involved in this historical event that weren't in the know, that weren't smartened up. But at the time, the cops weren't concerned with being a part of history. All they saw was one of their own being tossed around like a rag doll before 20,000 people by this crazed man in a kilt. Wow. In a matter of weeks, I had managed to kick Cyndi Lauper, punch one of the supposed toughest guys in America on national TV, and piss off New York's finest. Well, I'd rather be pissed off than pissed on. I was capitalizing on my opportunities and was also helping put our sport on the map. Hogan and I were definitely in a zone that night in Madison Square Garden because not only did the cops and fans in attendance know the feud was real, they bought into it. But MTV wound up having its highest rated program of the season. We not only made wrestling and MTV history that night, we also set the stage for wrestling's most historical event, WrestleMania 1. And if you guys come back, and I'll be back on Storytime, I will be getting into WrestleMania 1. After the whole rock and wrestling connection leading into there, like I just covered the war to settle the score, there was also the brawl to settle it all on MTV. Unbelievable times, the golden era, from the viewpoint of Rowdy Roddy Piper. So story time here with the GOC. It doesn't get any better than that. So I will be back, and again, much love and respect. This will be uploaded. Enjoy it, spread the word. And I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it.